Woo! Welcome in, sludge balls, to the YORICK buffs! Woo. Patch 14.3, baby, it's time! We got so many changes, so many YORICK buffs. Let's get started! First one up, the big one, the YORICK Q buff. Holy shit, missing health healing? God damn! The new buff adds a juicy 4 to 8% missing health heal on every single Q, and the mana cost is also lower by 5. This seems too good to be true, and yeah, there are some side effects, so that it's not too powerful. YORICK Q no longer doubles in healing when below half HP, and the second part is that it only gives half the health against non-champions. So one thing that I used to do a lot in previous patches was queuing in minions when I was super low health, and it was a nice 100 HP health pack. But now that's going to be slightly lower. But let's be honest, who even cares? In the worst case scenario, your Q will be healing at minimum 4% HP. This adjustment is ironically probably the first change they've even made to buff bruiser builds in the history of YORICK. Now we are more incentivized to build tankier stats and bruiser items. Even if you don't build bruiser items, it's just a buff anyways, you get so much extra health. I've been talking about it for a while now, but if YORICK gets Sunlit Sky and Qs enemy champions, you're getting around a base healing of 200 HP and 14% missing health each singular Q standard proc. And that's from one singular item. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. The next buff, and arguably the biggest one, YORICK's E cast time is going from 0.33 seconds to 0.25, making it now 25% faster. They did make the YORICK E arc higher, meaning that it's more visible, but it doesn't matter when it's coming at you so fucking fast. All of these changes are gigantic changes for YORICK, but this one, in my opinion, is the biggest one. For high elo YORICK mains, Diamond Plus, the way YORICK worked before was, if you went for max range E's, it was really dodgeable and you could react to it if you had good mechanics. Whenever YORICK throws E now, if you aren't a fucking descendant from Faker's grandfather, you cannot react to it. This also means that because YORICK E cast time is faster, max range E's that would be just out of reach previous patches would hit now. So that means there are newer engage, poke and kill angles. The next adjustment, which a lot of YORICK mains have been saying is a buff, a nerf, an adjustment, definitely the most controversial one. Maiden's damage procs is reduced from 369% max health to 2, 2.5 and 3% max health depending on its level. But Maiden procs no longer have a 2-second cooldown, so you can technically proc it as much as you want. To quickly explain in case people don't understand Maiden procs, whenever YORICK hits a target Maiden's attacking, it deals this % health extra magic damage. A lot of people are saying that this is a nerf because we may not be able to even get 3 procs late game, and old Maiden just has more burst overall. But after playing a lot of YORICK games, testing it, playing around a new patch, I can safely say that this is just a straight up big fucking buff, full stop, and no conversation. From level 6 Maiden, if you literally auto attack twice, you outvalue old Maiden procs. And a lot of people don't notice, but abilities also proc Maiden damage. So let's say Maiden's hitting someone and I E auto Q, that's 3 procs in less than a second, and it doubles the damage old Maiden would do at level 1 ult. Later on in the game, the difference between old and current Maiden does increase, needing 3 procs every 2 seconds to stay the same with old YORICK Maiden. But that's not too hard because by the time you're level 16, you're already going to be doing so much damage with a bruiser or the fatality build that the Maiden procs become trivial. So basically, this is a huge buff for early game YORICK, being able to have an increase in DPS, and at worst an adjustment in late game, which is already a strong point for YORICK anyways, so who cares? Now the final changes, the changes that weren't actually documented, the secret to the 8 ghoul engage, the infinite ghoul trick. I'm gonna reveal it all to you. Yeah, they're pretty impractical. But first, let's talk about the patch notes, then we'll talk about the changes that weren't actually mentioned. The 2 changes the stated they implemented was that YORICK ghouls and Maiden run faster when they return to YORICK, and the summon leash range is reduced from 2000 range to 1.6k. So the YORICK ghoul Maiden returning fast is a quality of life to fix it, so that when you back or teleport and your ghouls aren't with you, they run faster back to you. It's pretty rare, but it's just a nice quality of life, why not? Oh Shibai! Adding on to this post edit, a new interaction with this kind of thing that's been added has been found. Whenever YORICK ghouls outside his leash range and chasing someone in the jungle, they gain increasing movement speed depending on how far YORIK is away from the ghouls. So if YORIK is super far away, they will run and chase down the enemies in the jungle at 900 movement speed. And that pretty much means if you eat the enemy and run away, specifically in the jungle, there is nothing they can do. The ghouls will catch up to them like fucking Sonic. It's very hard to explain, but basically, whenever YORIK eats an enemy in the jungle now, or whenever ghouls aggro onto someone in the jungle and they hit them, the further YORIK is away from the ghouls, the faster they run, which can lead to, I'm not even joking, this may lead to moments where an immobile mage or someone that just can't deal with the ghouls will have literally no option to do anything. They can't run away. Combine that with a Fowley and a Grudge build, and boom, there's nothing you can do. Anyways, cool little thing, surprisingly useful. The second change of the ghoul leash range can be a bit hard to understand, because it in itself is a bit hard to explain. YORIK has an invisible circle around him, which is the summon leash range, and what this affects is basically the range of which YORIK can have 4 ghouls around him. So one common thing that more experienced YORIK mains like me do is shoving a wave with 4 ghouls and setting up graves. After the wave is cleared, the ghouls will keep running it down, and what you do is wait a few seconds, and when the ghouls run out of the range, you can respawn the graves in the ground, and have 4 ghouls yourself while also having 4 ghouls pushing. This change makes it so that it's easier to do, reducing the range where you need to wait until they get out of your leash range. Pretty nice, and in case you didn't do the ghoul push spawn tech, here it is, start doing it, dickholes. Now the undocumented changes are, YORIK can have infinite ghouls outside of his leash summon range, the one I was talking about just now. Yes, literally infinite. Now it sounds pretty crazy. Oh, if I release Maiden and create an entire army? No, unfortunately not. Riot did consider that and made it so that Maiden also has a leash range, meaning a max of 4 ghouls can only be within Maiden's range. So how can we abuse the infinite ghouls outside his range? You know how even earlier I was talking about the ghouls pushing graves setup? Well, if you get a similar setup where the enemy champion's nearby and you have 4 ghouls, 4 graves, you can eat the enemy at far away range and walk away. And what this will do is make the ghouls jump the enemy and awaken the graves in the ground as you walk away, allowing up to 8 ghouls to jump the enemy. The way this works is that when you send the ghouls at the enemy, you are still within the summon leash range. But as you run away, you leave the leash range around the ghouls, and then the graves notice, oh shit, YORIK, there ain't any ghouls around you, and is that a mark? Oh my god! So they jump the enemy, and that's the 8 ghouls setup. Slogdog, I saw the video. How do you send an army of 700,000 ghouls at the enemy? And I'm sorry to disappoint, but realistically, in a normal League of Legends game, you can't really set it up properly. Getting more than 8 ghouls within a given area is pretty much impossible because enemies will just hit it and kill it, and if they don't, they will inevitably run to you and kill themselves. But in practice tool right now, you can get some ghouls and get some graves, eat a dummy, walk away, and then go to another area, get some more ghouls and graves, and repeat the same thing. Then you can clear the target dummies, teleport somewhere and put a target dummy where the ghouls will intersect, and boom! They will fit the criteria of being outside YORIK's summon range, and there you can get an infinite amassment of YORIK ghouls and you mess around with it. Note that if they even get into your range though, they'll all die, so be careful. It doesn't seem realistic that you can get it in a consistent way in an actual game, but there are a few rare niche scenarios where it can happen. One of them being jungle YORIK, where you're clearing raptors of ghouls and then eating red buff afterwards and then walking the scuttle of Krugs, and boom, you have maybe 4+ ghouls doing red buff that will come back to you in a bit. Anyways, that's the YORIK changes. Time to talk about the items. I have made a severe lapse in my judgment. I will be addressing the allegations. The Triforce allegations. Recently, there's been a lot of Trinity Force talk between the YORIK mains about whether it's a good item or not, and I must admit, I am largely in fault because I've stated about 1,000,000 times since the start of Season 14 that the item is a piece of shit. I've compared it to a hot ex-girlfriend, where they used to be the best, you know, giving increased base AD every auto, stacking up to 18%, you know, a 10 times better build path of cheaper sheen, and actual decent components. But in Season 14, they've changed, you know. They've lost that part about them no longer having the increased base AD, and even worse, having a worse build path than before, while keeping the same price. What a scumbag. Well, after some time has passed, after these YORICK buffs and Triforce buffs, so that Sheen is actually cheaper now. Now I can safely say that Triforce is still a giant piece of shit. I won't complain about the item too much since last patch review, it was basically an entire rant about the item, the entire video, but I want to add on about the main reasons and why other alternatives are suited better for YORICK. Every champion in the game right now that builds Trinity Force all abuse it in some way or just don't have very good alternatives. If we look at the highest pick rate champions that go Triforce, Nala doesn't have good alternatives, Jax can just use W with a very low cooldown, and Camille can abuse it with her Q. And the same could be said for a lot of other high pick rate champions where they go Triforce. They all utilize it really well. YORICK has two things that make Triforce pretty semi-decent. A high base AD and a short CD on Q. That's it. And the problem with that is, yes, that's not the worst thing ever, but YORICK synergizes so much better with other items and effects. Whether it be the fact that he procs Eclipse pretty much instantly and Eclipse is so much cheaper and gives you so much more damage. Whether he scales so well with Armor Pen, the Lethality, or whether he just works well with Shojin's spell effect damage, another really solid bruiser item. Or hell, why not fucking Sun and Sky, where with the Q healing buff, combined with Sun and Sky healing, that's insane. And yeah, Sun and Sky doesn't give us much damage, but it gives you so much more effective HP that it just lets you last like 20 extra seconds in a fight. Okay, maybe not that much, but you get the point. Sun and Sky also scales further and further on as you get more and more health items. Meanwhile, Triforce stagnates, falling off, only being the most effective the second you buy it, and still not even being as effective as other first item spikes like Eclipse. Triforce is most effective in an isolation 1v1 against enemy top, but at the same time, it ironically doesn't even beat your hard counters who just stomp you to the ground, and a conundrum is presented where you could go Triforce for the split push, but why the fuck would you not go Lethality? Lethality gives you so much more threat in the side lane and so much more kill pressure. Okay, I am talking a little bit too much shit about Triforce, but let's be honest here. I just want to say, even though I say all of this, Triforce fundamentally isn't that bad on YORICK. It makes his Qs more threatening and it gives him pretty decent base stats. I will be honest, I have a strong bias, but I was so used to the old Triforce, and new Triforce is just a strictly worse version, but at the same time, we have much better alternatives. So the problem is, Season 14 just gives us a lot of good items and Trinity is just kind of overshadowed. Though ultimately, my opinions are my opinions, and even if Trinity Force is objectively good or bad, who cares? The reality is, if it works for you, go for it. There's nothing wrong with building an item that's like 5% worse or 5% better than something else. Your playstyle, your gameplay, all of that will define whether an item will be good or not. It just coincides that I'm a very aggressive YORICK player and I prioritize burst and damage a lot more than other consistent DPS options, something that Triforce is decently effective at. So TLDR, if you turned your brain off completely or if my jibber jabber confused you, Triforce in my opinion sucks and nothing really changed with the buffs with YORICK and the items same thing ever. But if you like Triforce, if you're winning of Triforce, or if you just straight up disagree, hey Slogdog, fuck you, Triforce is good, who am I to stop you? It's Season 14. Ultimately, there's so much item diversity now, we aren't limited to mythics. I am not going to physically threaten you to stop you from going an item. Why the fuck would I do that? Anyways, let's move on to some positivity. The final note on this video. A really solid new bruiser item that has gotten reworked and is in our opinion one of the strongest bruiser YORICK items, and at the same time enables a completely new playstyle. Stridebreaker has been turned into a Tiamat item, giving wave clear now of every order, and the Tiamat effect now does damage while also slowing the enemy and giving yourself movement speed. Also, the speed you get from damaging the enemy hasn't been changed, so that means if ghouls hit the enemy, you get extra movement speed still. So you know what that means? Speed Rick is back in town, baby! Honestly, I'm so glad that Stridebreaker got changed. It's now a really solid item all the way around if you want to play a boozery, slippery style, and it fits really well with the way YORICK is meant to be played. Very in and out, rather than the classic juggernaut of slamming your fucking head into walls. There's a lot of skill expression of the Speed Rick build, playstyle, needing good movement and mechanics with dodge and bait abilities, while also having a lot of versatility, being able to go Lethality, Bruiser, and even tank setups. It's not like the old Strikebreaker Glacial Yarg setup where you had to dash and gave them Mega A's, but this setup is incredibly similar to that, and now we have some really interesting new items and runes to play with. That was it for today's patch review. A lot of stuff, I know, very overwhelming, and I actually spoke a little bit faster than usual, but yeah, this is just... I'm honestly so excited. This is probably one of the most fun, exciting patches for YORICK, I'd say, in history. I hope to do more YORICK videos in this channel, a lot more stuff, not just patch reviews. I plan to do a Stridebreaker video where I talk about the item playstyle and teach you guys how to play it as well. I plan to do a YORICK series where I do educational, teach you guys techs and stuff that I do that you might not do. And I plan to release the Kiana video. I love Kiana, she's so sweet. Okay, that's a little bit weird, don't tell her that. But yeah, Kiana video coming out in 3 days, and YORICK series coming out soon. Yeah, woohoo! Anyways, guys, screw you, rat bags. If I catch you going Triforce, I'm going to fucking kill